Hi, everybody. Well, that wasn't working, so I'm sorry I'm late. I was actually going into my whole introduction and spiel and welcoming everybody, and clearly it wasn't working. So I'll just start again. Anyway, hello. It's Connection Point Conversation Wednesday. I have Thomas joining me in a few minutes, and thank goodness I can see that people are here because I didn't know what was going on. So thank you so much, Thomas, for letting me know what was going on. Anyway, so today is going to be really interesting. The topic today is going to be on busyness. And busyness, when Thomas first approached me with, oh, let's talk about busyness, there was something inside that just went, I don't want to talk about busyness, but I didn't know why. So Thomas and I are all about hopefully inspiring and encouraging people to be able to sit with their feelings and really figure out what it is that's going on when you have them so that you're more aware of them. So I thought I'll sit with this idea for a few days, which I did, and still not really clear on what was going on for me. So what I said was yes, in spite of this, I don't want to talk about that because obviously it's got some good stuff. You know, if we have those kinds of feelings, there's probably some interesting information in there. So what I was saying previously when I thought that I was live when I wasn't, thank you, Thomas, for letting me know that, is that society on a whole, I know especially in North America, we really have this busy thing going on. And in a way, as you said, it's kind of glorified in a way. So we're going to discuss a lot about that today. What I also noticed when I was thinking is how important it is to have time to think. So I was thinking is that the pandemic has made a completely different experience around busyness for different people. So for me, it's meant that I'm less busy because there's 3 of my jobs I can't do. I like to be busy. I like to create. I like to paint. I like to do stuff. I like to visit, talk. It's part of my social life. So I've had to learn that feels a little bit uncomfortable for me. I like to be busy. I like to have structure. So I'm having to learn a whole year of learning to do things differently that kind of go against what I am or who I am or how I express myself in life. Then there's the other people that I've noticed. Wow, those people, they've got kids at home. A lot of my family are in this boat. They're working from home. They're having to learn how to balance new babies, teenagers, school, not school, no daycare. And the pandemic has made it even busier for them with all this juggling. And so, you know, there's lots of different things about busyness. Now, for me, what kind of came up, thank you for being so patient, Thomas.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that, is my experience of busyness, I think, when I really had to sit with it, because it still kind of makes me feel a little bit anxious talking about it, was an experience as a child of my mom's busyness. Now, some of you know, I've had a very difficult childhood and grown through that and past that, and these things still occasionally come up where I go, oh, wait a minute. Okay, I remember that. My mom had sort of a social anxiety, which caused her to drink, which also caused her to be overly busy in a more of a frenetic way, not able to sit down and relax, not able to read a book or spend time with guests even. She'd be up doing the dishes before everybody was finished. That sort of busyness, having to keep busy. So there was that. And then there was my own way of being busy, is that I grew into an adult. I was a stay-at-home mom. The way for me to show my value or for me to feel that I'm valued was to be busy, was to do everything until painting the house, doing the gardening, doing the lawn mowing, doing the cooking, the cleaning, and 4 children, and just being busy, 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 and never stopping till the end of the day where I go, But you see, I was proving my worth. And then I remember one day, my second husband said to me, why are you sitting? He was actually off work for a year by choice. And I would still be doing my thing. And he said, why are you sitting down having lunch? And I'm going, wait a minute. Even employees are allowed to sit down and have lunch. But I went to, oh, okay, like I shouldn't be sitting down. I have to keep going, right? I have to be busy. So that's kind of my experience and why it feels a little bit yucky for me. Now, with others, clients, family, friends, people in general, I've noticed that busyness, there's sort of different busyness. Now, I'm going to really look forward to hearing what you have to say about this, Thomas. But I know that people with OCD are very busy, kind of ties into some social anxiety, OCDness, whatever the issue is, but I'm just going to use that as a generic term. Anxiety. So a lot of people who are anxious have trouble being able to just sit. And there's underlying reasons for that as well, emotional reasons. And then there's the big one, which is kind of avoidance. And I know in part of my own experience being married is that my husband's avoided connection, more intimate relationship, communication, consciousness, and awareness with me by being busy. So it's a multi-layered topic, and it isn't like, oh yeah, let's just discuss busyness. I sort of went, oh, okay. So Thomas, and it's 11:11, so now I'm going to pass it over to you.
I love it. Thank you. A couple of things, Mheyah, come up for me. Is I want to acknowledge your courage and your vulnerability. Because yes, whatever came up for you when I first thought this might be something that we could talk about, I was really impressed that you allowed yourself to sit with it. I was really impressed that I got to hear that it created something for you and you didn't know what it was. And I was also impressed, and this is in line with who it is that I think that you and I choose to be in our lives, that you were willing to have a conversation about something that created some anxiety for you. And ultimately, it is only the brave that can be vulnerable. So I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that and thank you for showing up today with that discomfort and also being willing to dive into and explore whatever it is that we're going to explore today. That's kind of my point. So thank you for being that brilliant light. It's a great example. It helps me remember, yeah, you can show up and you can be anxious. You can show up and not know. You can show up to discover what might be there for you. And maybe that's the case today, and maybe it's not. But I'm excited about a conversation because when this first came up, obviously, like you, I got in touch with, how did busy live for me? Early in my life, it lived as a way as a little boy to get attention, right? Number 7 out of 10 kids. Mom was pretty bored by the time the 7th came along. Didn't get a lot of attention, didn't get a lot of recognition. So I used as a little boy this notion of busy to actually get love. Mm-hmm. And as an adult, I began to look at that dynamic for me and realized that doesn't really work all that well for me. Mm-hmm. And then I remembered a quote by Thoreau who said, it's not enough to be busy, so are the ants. The question is, what are we busy about? So it became quality in relation to busy for me, and I could begin to let go of quantity. But because I've been that busy for love, I could easily notice those that may be doing the same thing. So the qualifier for me today is it's not about busy bashing. This conversation isn't about busy bashing for those that are in that place. That's completely okay. It's about getting underneath it and maybe being inspired with this conversation to discover what busy might be for you.
Exactly. And I really appreciate you saying that because this isn't about busy bashing. That's a really good term. And and thank you very much for your kind words. I really appreciate that.
You are so welcome.
Yeah. I just think that sometimes we busyness is our way to divert attention from elsewhere, is what I've experienced. And so, and for me, of course, the attention to things that I feel are important hasn't always been necessarily, honored by other people in terms of wanting to have more intimate, connected relationships that are real and authentic. And I find that a lot of people just stay kind of on the surface by staying busy. Oh, I've got to do this or I've got to do that. And then I could be completely wrong. That's just what I see sometimes. I don't know what your thoughts are on that in terms of avoidance and busyness.
It's a brilliant observation. And classically in our humanity, for those things that challenge us, we have the ability to layer over top of them something. It might be busy, it might be alcohol, right? It might be work, it might be some of the distraction that doesn't allow us, or consciously we just don't want to go there. So we put something over top of it so that that thing that's underneath it, is diminished, disappeared, and more importantly, people don't get to discover that that thing that is really the core issue for us isn't exposed, right? We don't want to bring light to it because we've got a story that it's dark and we won't be loved or liked if people see this. So we're at risk of layering busy over top of that as a distraction. And I love, Brene Brown kind of leaned into this in, I believe it was Daring Greatly, where she kind of coined and said, crazy busy, right, is great armor. Right? What a lot of us do so that we can stay busy, so we can stay out in front of our lives, so that the truth of what we're feeling and what we really need actually can't catch up with us.
Yes, I'm loving what you said there. In a way, so when I work with clients around this, busyness is actually one of the things I throw in there in terms of when they're dealing with an addictive nature to avoid, whether, as you said, it's alcohol, or whether it's fitness, or whether it's busyness, or whether it's drugs, whether it's porn, whether it's whatever. It can have, not obviously all the time, it can have sometimes an addictive quality to it, as you say, to avoid what's going on underneath and being able to sit with that. And Brene Brown did talk a lot about with being able to sit with it, the feelings and the things that are underneath there, the shadows, the stuff that we need to sort of acknowledge to be more authentic in our lives and embrace them in a lot of ways. It's another avoidance strategy that kind of is lumped in there, I think, a little bit with addictions.
It's very true, because ultimately, when I use busy as a way to get love, what I was doing was I was filling my life with lots of little quick hits, as opposed to a more meaningful thing that I could take on that might take me a little bit longer, right? I found that whether it was I'd be the first of the kids, I'll go to the grocery store, Mom, or I'll clean up, Mom, or I needed to keep myself busy so that I didn't lean into something that was perhaps more meaningful for me. And of course, as a younger person, I would say that not all the busyness, right, didn't accomplish the things that I wanted, but ultimately the busyness created for me and can create for me that anxiety or that stress, and ultimately leaning into this notion of, so why do we do it, right? And I think we do it because busy can actually feel good.
There's an adrenaline component to it.
Yeah, and I know that there are folks that I've worked with that use busy as a way to feel extremely important, right? Or feel that they're in demand, or that everybody needs them. And apparently there are, for the most part, our physiology is made up with a bunch of chemicals, right? So I did a little bit of research and thought, what was connected to a chemical that we might get as a hit by being busy? And of course, Simon Sinek, in his talk about why, and I think it's the TED Talk is quite, it's really a great TED Talk, but it really talks about this notion of why. And he always delves into the chemicals that make us up, and not to suggest that we aren't lots of other things. So the four of them are, and of course there's more, it's endorphins, right? It's the chemical that our bodies use to diminish pain. There is serotonin, right? It gives us pride and status. It has us doing something for our moms or our partners. It reinforces relationship in our lives. And of course, and then there's oxytocin. It's the chemical in our body that creates intimacy or trust, right? Moms have it with their babies, right? Partners have it with their significant others. It's a way for us to feel loved and protected. And then the fourth one, right, called dopamine. It's the hit that we get, I think, when we're busy, because it motivates us to achieve. So it's a good thing. But of course, like good things, if it's overused, it becomes not a good thing, right? So it motivates us to achieve our incremental goals. It's the reward we get, Mheyah, from our bodies, which is just amazing. It's the reward we get for motivated behavior. It's kind of like the greed function of our brains, right? It makes us feel good when we can check things off our list, right, to help us get through a project or a milestone. And dopamine can be highly addictive.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear you. And I'm just loving the way you've described that, because that's sort of my conversation led into what, you put the science in it. And I love Simon Sinek. He says so many wonderful, his TED Talks are great. I just love listening to him. He's fabulous. And so you're right. Busyness gives us something, and it leads also into, well, it's leading me into that conversation where you ask a busy person if you want something to get done.
Yes.
Is kind of like there is a reward behind that. We can look like we're being very altruistic in, well, I'll do that, I'll help you, I'll do this, oh, I can do that. However, there's an unconscious hidden agenda that it gives us that hit of dopamine. And sometimes if it's really amplified, you can actually feel that at times in relationship, that it's almost like a needy person needing to be needed by being busy and helping and going out there and doing all that stuff. Does that, that probably sounded really like a roundabout way of saying what I'm trying to say.
No, actually, I thought it was a really great way to say it, because ultimately, when we become obsessed with busy, right, believing that it keeps us engaged, it keeps us productive, it's important, and nothing can be further from the truth. It's kind of like there are some myths about busy that when we explore them, there's also an opportunity to let them go, because those myths might be at the foundation of why it is we feel that we need to be needed. So I think it was a brilliant observation, Mheyah. It really was.
Thank you. And it's also making it come up for me about all the young mums who we stretch with, in my experience with young moms and being a mom, that there's something really important about the busyness of being a good parent, that there's a drive there in terms of not wanting to be judged by others if we're not being busy and not doing everything we're supposed to be doing. That somehow there's quite a lot of judgment, self-judgment, I think, for moms. I think a lot of the time society says we're supposed to be busy and to be a good mom and to be a good parent, and so I think there's different layers of different things for different people, if you know what I mean.
I do, and perhaps that leads into the notion of probably one of the first myths, I think, that is prevalent with busy, and it's this notion that busy is engaged. Right? Mm-hmm. When I'm too busy to listen to my amazing husband, or I'm too busy to make an appointment that would have me have a better sense of what my health is like, or spend an afternoon with somebody who's really dear to me, I'm actually not engaged in my life. Right? I'm engaged in busy, and I'm focused on things that I have to do that may not actually be all that important for me. So busy is not about being engaged. It can actually be the opposite.
Well, that's exactly what I was saying about my experience with my mom.
Indeed.
But now it makes me feel a little bit sad, because when I was raising my children, and I see that with lots of moms, there's this expectation of doing everything well, that the house is clean, that the dishes are done, that there's food in the thing, and that kind of busy took me away from, as you say so eloquently, the engagement of being with my babies and my children at the time. We were running to school, we had soccer, we had baseball, we had this and we had that, and yet really what I've noticed, so beautifully with my family and my sons with their children, is that the pandemic has given them less busy in some ways, more busy in other ways, but more time to be engaged in really deeply emotional ways as families, as mother and daughter, mother and son, and fathers and daughters, and the whole bit. There's been more quality time to be able to engage without the judgment of not being busy.
Yeah, there's a really fine line there, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
this notion of, perhaps the second myth of busyness is that busy is productive.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When I run around thinking everything's an emergency because I'm so busy, I'm not focused, I'm not intentional, perhaps not effective. It actually takes me longer to do things. I
Mm-hmm.
certainly make more mistakes, and I feel anxious and I'm stressed and I'm not productive. And also that because I think busy is productive, and I want to honor Mheyah. I heard you say that you felt some sadness when you leaned into,
Mm-hmm.
right, the first myth that we talked about. And
Mm-hmm.
isn't it amazing that by even examining this, and when I take a breath, right, and I've got a couple of suggestions for how it is that you can kind of lean into realizing whether or not busy for busy's sake is running your life. But it does give us an opportunity to check in, just like you did, to check in with a feeling of sadness that was there for you. And ultimately, if we could live life more intentional, if we could live life with those breaks that has us really land on, well, how am I feeling right now? So I thought that
Mm-hmm.
was brilliant. I wanted to acknowledge that for you.
Thank you. But I
You're
mean,
welcome.
I was a young mom. I didn't really know. And as I grew up and I've learned more, I've learned how to be more engaged with my family. And yet there's obviously a loss for kind of buying into that story. And so thank you for acknowledging that and appreciating it. And
You're
what I
welcome.
hope comes out of us talking this is that people, who are listening and that they can go, oh, wait a minute, maybe there is something to that, and I can do this little piece differently. I don't think I'm going to want, 20 years from now to go, yeah, I'm really glad I got all the dishes done. I really wish that I'd had more time to read stories. So,
Me and you remind me, right? I've had a lot of Dolans in my life take their last breath, and I seem to be one in the family that takes care of the world things in relation to their goodbye. But in my experience of my family, and in my experience of honoring other people's lives and attending funerals and listening to somebody have a conversation about somebody, me, I've never heard anybody say in a eulogy of somebody else, you know what I loved most about Thomas while he was alive? He was so busy.
I know. And
Amazing,
he, and
huh?
he, and he spent all his time at work.
Exactly. And he was busy because he thought it would impress us, right? The busier he
Yeah.
got, he really thought it was a reflection of how important he was. Another one of the myths, right? Busy is not about actually
Mm.
getting a sense that you're impressive, right? I would sooner hear from somebody what would be impressive for me, as opposed to hearing how busy they are, is for them to take a moment to share the vision they have for their life, to take a moment to describe a sunset they saw. That would be impressive to me, not busy.
I know. That is a really interesting piece that equating if I'm a really busy person, then I'm important. There's an ego piece to it. So busyness to me can, not all the time. I just want to make sure we're really clear on that.
Yes.
There can be, it can be an ego portion to that. And also because as you said, we get the dopamine, but also uh, we can build our persona around that.
Yes. Yeah. Boy, that's so true. And that's egotistical, right?
Yeah.
And
Um,
not bad and wrong, not bad and
no, not,
wrong.
yeah.
But ultimately, the key would be so you discover that you're busy. It's not about beating yourself up because you are. How do I love the part of me that from time to time can kind of run with busy to the point where I'm in balance? How can I learn to love that? Because there's probably something positive I get from actually being that energy, along
Absolutely.
with along with the other side of it, right? Which might be relaxed or meditative or resting. There's equal. So this is not about discovering some part of you going, oh my God, I want to throw that out. No, it's about discovering that it exists.
Mhm.
What is it behind it, right? Because we I think we've been duped into thinking that busy is fulfilling, right? When I'm busy, I don't take time to be grateful. I don't notice how beautiful that sunset is. I don't
Mhm.
appreciate a meaningful conversation. So I think busy may not be fulfilling, right? Too much of what we do and not enough time of what we really want to lean into that fulfills us can actually be the other side of the energy of us that can be quiet
So it's
and
about
thoughtful.
balance.
It's about balance. That's exactly. I
So,
mean,
yeah,
isn't life all about this thing of balance, right?
it is. I
Yeah,
know.
indeed. Yeah.
It's interesting. I have a few people in my life that have ADD. Um, And they're naturally very active. They have lots of energy, and huge amounts of gifts to it. I remember somebody not understanding that actually some people, not all people, with ADD have a real ability to need, not an ability, well, an ability and a need to actually um, and do something
Yeah.
else. And I remember somebody criticizing somebody who was watching TV or something and saying, or gaming or something, I can't remember what it was. Oh, they're just being lazy. And I'm going, ooh, no. I said, this is the balance of busyness, having a busy mind and a busy body. This is downtime, self-care time. This is not lazy. Like labels like that are not good ones, and it's important to be able to know, as you said, balance. You have to have balance. And I think that's really important. And I remember once I had a really tough time when I wasn't with my second husband. And I remember my son coming home after, I think he was a week or 2 weeks away. So he says, "So, Mom, what have you been doing?" And I said, "I've been busy thinking. I've been busy thinking." And I thought there had been so much value in my thinking that we don't always give ourselves time. Now I would call it processing, to think. I don't think we value that in our life. It's like we have to look like we're action orientated rather than understanding that there's huge amounts of value in taking the time to think, to process, and he was really cute. It was my youngest son. He always comes out with really good stuff. And he goes, "Oh, I think that's a very undervalued quality, Mom." I went, "I think so too. I think the last 10 days thinking was really valuable." So it is interesting how we can only take that. Sometimes people only take value in the busyness part, the action, the physical. But I was busy, but I was thinking and
Yes.
processing and giving myself that time. And I
Yes.
recommend that highly to lots of people.
And can I add to the mix, because I think it's equally as important that we also take time to feel.
Well, that's kind of what I
But
was
that
going.
that oh no, I know for you, Mia, that's exactly it. Uh, but ultimately, because again, kind of another myth around busyness is that it's resilient, right?
Mm-hmm.
For me, when I'm in that place and I'm out of balance, it's not resilient. It's exhausting, right? It
Oh,
it
yeah.
doesn't add to my well-being because I
Mm-hmm.
can't feel good about myself even after an accomplishment, let alone celebrate it, because I'm busy rushing off, right, to the next thing on my list. So your thinking, your processing time is really a wonderful gift you give yourself. And at the same time, to be able to sit quiet like you did earlier on when you got in touch with sadness.
Mm-hmm.
And I know most likely with me, you've done some work to be able to acknowledge the presence of that feeling. And ultimately, busy is the fuel that we use to run our lives. We're missing a great opportunity to process. We're missing a great opportunity to feel and be able to use both of those energies to actually get a better sense of how it is that we want to be in our lives, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the costs of it.
Hmm. Wow. Boy, oh boy. For me, the first thing that came up, and I don't even know what it is that I missed, Mia, but I think one of the costs for me was that I missed what it is that my family was either up to or what it is that they weren't up to that I might have been able to notice to save myself. And ultimately, they all contributed to strengths that I have today. But the busyness of just not me and those that were around me, I think was one of those layering techniques we used to actually miss what was really going on for us. So I would suggest one of the first things is it's a great distraction, right? It becomes a habit
Mm-hmm.
for us. Busy becomes a habit
Mm-hmm.
so that we may not even realize what it is that we're missing. But for me, it was probably missing what another one of my family members either needed, really needed me to see, or perhaps what they really needed me to actually just sit and listen to what was coming up for them.
Wow, that's really interesting because I'm thinking there's huge amounts of costs. I know for myself it was my health. You know, I
Mm,
I I think I'm not the only person who's men, women all over the world. We If we're not in touch with that self full place,
Yes.
of what we need, the self-care place. I'm going to just say that for those who don't understand self-full, but is I burnt out. My adrenal glands were shot, and I know a lot of young mums ex- experience this. This is and dads, not just mums, but dads. But of course, my experience is, being a female around burnout with children and families, and I literally crashed. So busyness without purpose, or busyness for the sake of busyness, with sort of an emotional unconsciousness behind it, avoiding all of those sorts of things, absolutely burnt my body out to the extent that I didn't have any choice. And I know a lot of my clients and a lot of mums, they don't. It's a crash and burn situation. So, and then that's when you learn to reevaluate. Okay, busyness needs to be more intentional. It needs to have a purpose, and to evaluate where you want to spend your energy. If your energy is being compromised and you're not used to that, that becomes a really big process, I think, for a lot of people.
It does. And for me, I constantly reminding myself there are different aspects of me, right? I'm right.
Your internet just went down a little bit, Thomas.
Good. Am I back?
You're just back
Yes.
now.
Great. Thank
Great.
you. Thank you.
Yes.
What I was saying, Mheyah, before technology leaned the other way was I think it's a great skill to be able to notice when it's of greater value when I can have busyness and busyness doesn't have me.
That's completely, it's a choice.
It's a choice. It's naming the elephant in the room. And of
Yeah.
course, when I don't name the elephant in the room, it actually gets to occupy the entire space. When I name it, I can have it. So busyness can run amok. I think one of the other challenges with busyness running the show is that it kind of takes over your life. It doesn't allow you to be in this creative zone for yourself. It maybe doesn't allow you to be in the humanity of what's presented for you to be able to notice. So I think
Yeah.
it's really important for me to be able to have it, because it's important to have it. It's a great energy, but ultimately I want to have it. I do not want it to have me. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally makes sense. And what's coming up for me when you're saying that is that it is choice. That's such an important thing. And I think when people get burnt out, you'll hear people going, "Well, I didn't have any choice. I had to do it. It was it." And I think that that's what well, I have to do it. It's something I have to do. I don't have a choice. And so then it's like, oh, okay, wait a minute. Let's really discuss, what's important here. What would you rather be doing? What would it look like if you weren't being busy? And starting to explore where you have choice in terms of your time, in terms of where you want to put your energy, family, friends, things like that, work. It's all about having choice. And I think when you start to hear people going, well, I don't have a choice, I have to do that, it does put busyness and them kind of in the victim role of their lives rather than in the empowering place of choice. Does that make sense?
It does. Suddenly what you help me kind of wake up to is that busy then becomes the excuse why my life's not working.
Exactly.
It's not my responsibility. It's because my family have got 20 things for me to do. I'm busy because of somebody else. Therefore, life's not working because of somebody else. You are so right. It's about then stepping into the energy of victim and being able to declare, wow, it's not working for me because it's somebody else's fault.
Exactly. And I think that, it's human before we kind of start to learn how to take more responsibility in a different way than we've been taught, to blame other people, to blame our lives for why we're not happy. It's because of this and because of that. And so sometimes busyness can be the excuse for that. Insane.
Indeed. And it might be for somebody, it might be the reason for it as well.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
It's this notion of, do we examine it, right? Do we find the courage to examine it? Do we maybe sit with somebody and because they can see us and we can't see ourselves, and say, there's something going on for me, and I'm wondering if you can kind of help me get a better sense of what that is. It was one of the other things that I thought, that's what's helped me kind of dislodge myself. It's finding the vulnerability and the courage to sit with somebody and be able to say, and it wasn't therapy and it wasn't coach. It wasn't that relationship. And it wasn't my husband. And thankfully this occurred long before that. But ultimately it was somebody who just said, it was a woman I worked with in Calgary. And it's interesting, Mheyah, her last name was Theory. And she, at times, in a really good way, it was because of where I was. I lacked confidence, right? I lacked motivation. But she really invoked this fear in me. And she looked at me one day, because I made this request of her. I don't know how I found this. I'm in my later 20s. I don't know how I found that wisdom. But I said, I'm really struggling with something that's going on for me. Can you help me? And she said this to me: you're so damn busy, Thomas, that you can't see what your priorities are. You can't see your plan that you've laid out. You can't see the impact of not having those two things available for you. And ultimately, she said, I also notice in that busyness, you're not taking a breath.
Yes.
And we all have that extraordinary teacher. I have many. I'm so blessed. But I'm always remembering that as a way to think, gosh, don't know where I found that wisdom or the courage at that time, because I was pretty asleep in my life. But I said, can you help me? And she noticed it, right? And it was kind of 6 months into working with her, and she never said anything. And I'm sure she would at some point in time, because she was that brilliant. But ultimately, when I said, I need some help, and it was really uncomfortable because I kind of opened up, and she nailed it. I was just so damn busy that I was missing the impact, both for me, I couldn't see it, and ultimately the colleagues I was working with at the time.
Absolutely. When you're talking about that and your personal experience with that, what came into my head at the moment was, I didn't know who I was without being busy.
Another one, right? It's an identifier. It's who I am.
Yeah. I'm a busy person.
I'm a busy person. And of course, I'm looking for love. It's that badge of honor we talked about, right? When we post some promo, please give it to me, because I want you to recognize how damn busy I am. And of course, it's like, to me, right, to that part of me that time when I did that, I send this huge amount of compassion. I can be there again. My work is just to be awake enough to remember that today I have a different value for busy, and I can have it. And
without it having you. Oh, I love that. That's such a great thing. It's like, well, look how important I am to you, because I'm being busy. And I used to do that too. And look at all the things that I've done today, for my self-worth, and makes me lovable. And I really get that. What advice would you give? Let's just say somebody listening now, and if anybody wants to make a comment or ask a question, I would love it, because maybe we haven't sort of covered a lot of things. What's coming up for me at the moment is you might be noticing, someone might be noticing that, oh yeah, they have maybe kind of been doing that, or there's lots of, moms and dads out there who are burnt out and feeling like they don't have any choice. What advice could we give? Not advice, but what support or thoughts can we offer to how to start to change that piece of our lives? Because if somebody had said when I was, 23 with 2 children, and, that I was going to burn myself out by trying, that this had an emotional component to being busy, that my driver was because I needed to feel like I had some value to my husband, to my, to the world, because I was busy. I probably would have really I would have appreciated somebody saying that to me. I would have really, but nobody did. So I had to learn it all myself. So what do you think we could offer others if they're sort of looking and thinking, wow, sometimes I do feel really burnt out and I'm busy, and maybe that is something I do. What could we offer them that might be helpful?
The premise of this suggestion would be that busy can become a habit that runs your life. And if that's the case, and it might not be kind of full-time running of your life, but it might be moments or circumstances that busy takes over. It might be this. And this is along the lines of, how might somebody be able to kind of break the habit of being busy? So I'll make a couple of suggestions. The one for me that works really well is prioritize.
Mm-hmm.
This notion of what needs to be done that is urgent,
Mm-hmm.
and what things can wait.
Mm-hmm.
So looking for the things that you can actually take off, if you've got a list, to take them off the list altogether, and then ask yourself, is this meeting, is this task, is this event, is it essential? Give yourself permission to say no to things, and that you don't have to fill up every moment with an activity or a meeting.
That's true. And you have to be able to be with what not being busy brings up for you. And that's a key thing. I think a lot of people come to coaching and counseling because they're having trouble being with certain feelings that they're just uncomfortable with there. And when you change how you function, that's going to happen, but that's not a bad thing. That's a really good thing. That's part of processing, growing up, learning, and doing things differently, more authentically for yourself rather than the action of being busy. Because as you said, we can become addicted to busy. Now, the second thing you said, I think that's brilliant, because this is one of the main things I like to teach to people. It's one word: no. So, especially for really good girls who like to be busy, like me when I was younger, I didn't know how to say no. I didn't know how to set boundaries, and I would just say yes to everything. Can you do this? Can you do that? All of that. I would never say no. And I think it's one of my favorite words now is no, thank you. Or, you know what? I'd love to do that, but I can't do it today. Or I've learned to say no to other people when, like, it puts me at choice to be able to say no, thank you, I love you, no, I got to do that a different time, no to work, no to business, setting boundaries for me around my time. It has value, that I'm not available 100% all the time, that I almost, in a way, like you were saying, I make sure that I stick to the things that need to be done in a scheduled way. That really helps me then be able to have the time that's my time, that's my feeling time, my thinking time, my connecting with the people that I love time. Yes. If I don't do that, then I'm going to lose out. I'm going to be the loser if I don't change that.
So in that, Mheyah, there's two things that I think are really, 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 they're important for us. Number one, boundary. And number two, I love the self-care that you get by invoking that no as a boundary. Really important.
It is really important. And yeah.
The other suggestion I would make, I've got a few of them, is, and this will seem so obvious, but when we're in the midst of busy, we don't realize what's contributing to our busy. It's this thought of limiting our screen time. What can be the biggest time waster people face today is social media, is internet. If you can set aside a small amount of time for social media and stick to it, it then doesn't run your life, right? Better still, have social media free days. I think you'll be amazed at how much spare time you have, and not to be more busy, but ultimately to have that reflective time, that processing time, that feeling time, or heck, to be able to spend some gorgeous time with somebody that you love.
Yeah, it's so true, isn't it? Yeah. A while back, before you joined on the talks with me, I did talk to a really brilliant young lady about social media and how, again, it is one of those distractions that can keep us busy from not being with ourselves, with our own process, and connecting with others. It's what Gabor Mate says about alcoholism and addictions, is that it's a way to distract yourself from connection, from intimacy. And and I think that's the same thing with busyness. It's exactly the same. It's just a different tool.
I agree.
That you're using.
I agree.
And I think social media gives you all four of those things from a science perspective. It does. The dopamine, all of that.
Dopamine.
It gives you a hit, but it's not it's not it's not, what isn't it? I'm trying to say, it's not real in a way. I mean,
So true.
it's real, but it's not real. Like, I
Yes,
think what we're doing
exactly.
is real, but it's not.
It's encased in this little artificial environment that is really difficult to replicate in our lives. It's like for me, therapy was a laboratory space that I was in. And then my therapist would say, Thomas, are you ready now to take this thing that we worked on today into the real world? Into the
Exactly.
real world. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The other thing, Mheyah, I thought was, and this kind of felt silly when I thought about it, but actually inviting folks to remove the word busy from your vocabulary, right? There's no better way for me to kill or listen to a conversation and have the beautifulness of that conversation killed by somebody saying to me, I'm busy, right? How are you? I'm
Mm.
busy. Why not tell them by removing the word busy, making a commitment not to use the word busy? Why not tell them how you actually are or what you've been up to? Why not
That's a
bring in
brilliant idea.
it? I thought it was kind of silly, but
Oh, I love it.
I just thought, and you know, I replaced selfish with self-full, right? Because mom made the little guy
Yes.
selfish being the bad boy. I do that all the time. So for me, the notion of taking busy out and instead, and I don't think that, and not that if I did it would be a bad thing, but I'm always interested in somehow contributing to a meaningful conversation. So inviting folks to take the word out and then replace it
Use
with
something
a
different.
real share. Yeah, a real share with how you're doing.
Like,
Yeah,
I'd really prefer to do this, but I could maybe do what you're suggesting another time, or maybe not. But I'm just
yes,
saying, really, I have limited. I have. We all have a certain length of time in the day, and I really want to be with my family tonight,
yeah,
or whatever it is.
and for folks that have realized that they lean on busy, right, as a way of being, which
Mm-hmm.
is really actually a way of doing, that they might invoke, not use the word for an hour today and
Yeah.
see what that's like, right? The other thing that I thought about too was this idea of multitasking, right? I don't know if there's a winner when you're doing a whole bunch of things at one time. It takes your attention away from the one thing that you're doing. It means that there's perhaps a lot of things that are unfinished. Because when
Mm-hmm.
you try and do all things at once, you're often not doing them properly. But you can wind up, when I make that choice, I can wind up with this anxiety. So it would be this idea of letting go of multitasking. And I'll close with kind of the fifth, Mheyah, and it would be this, and you've already touched on it. Make time for downtime, right?
Mm-hmm.
When
Mm-hmm.
you're planning your week, pop in your week a number of times to remember to take some time out, to refresh yourself. Remember to be in the moment as much as you can, to take a breath,
Yes.
to pay attention to what's going on. And literally, as no doubt our grandparents and certainly for me, many other ancestors said in their Scottish brogue, smell the roses, Tommy.
Yes. That's a really good one. And what you're saying is also a sense of multitasking takes you away from doing something mindfully, sort of in the Buddhist tradition of being mindful, stops you layering on multitasking items in your book,
It's
I
very
think,
true.
on your page, as it were.
Very true. And I land on those kind of five suggestions from this vantage point. What might be some questions I can ask myself that will have me discover how healthful or not healthful my routine is? And one would be, what am I doing in a day that doesn't serve me?
Mm-hmm.
Why do I do all that I do? And what would happen if I stopped doing
Mm-hmm.
this?
Mm-hmm. And then that's exactly asking yourself those questions. And then the reframe of not using the word busy, but being authentic with yourself and honest with yourself about what you'd rather be doing for yourself,
Yes.
and being honest about that. And learning
Yes.
how to say no. This is what I'm doing this evening, or this is what I have to do this week. Not have to, but this is what I'm choosing. So it's about choice. This is what I'm choosing to do, period. And I think that in a way, that would be a healthier way of managing, or it's a reframe, taking out the word busy and being more authentic and honest about where you want to spend your time and your energy. And
True.
I'm being really mindful right now because I'm watching the time.
That's great. Thank you.
That we're coming up to the end of this fantastic talk. I feel much better now. Like, I mean, although I still feel a little bit sad, there's some losses in, being my age now and not knowing knowing now what I wished I'd known back then about being busy.
Well, and remember, and you know this, right? It's from research that was really uncomfortable for Brene Brown to discover, and it was this. She didn't want to acknowledge it. She went to her husband hoping that he would back her up because she didn't believe that we were doing the best things that we could do. We were doing the best that we could possibly do at that time. So a gentle reminder, Mheyah, and it helps me remember, gosh, for all those times where I was the queen of busy, that I was doing the best that I possibly could do.
I know.
Was doing the best I could possibly do.
And I love that. That's probably one of the most important things we can actually leave you with, too, is remembering exactly that piece, is that we're all doing the best we can with the information we have right now. That's all we can do. It's the best we can every day. So I really hope that this conversation has maybe inspired you in some way to make some choices for yourself that might be more appropriate, or that you're just happy with the way things are. We've just validated that. But now Thomas isn't with us next week, so we're going to miss them. But
thank you.
But if you want to join us next week, there'll be a different topic. I'll make sure I post about that. And Thomas will be back the following week. But he's choosing to do some other things.
Yes, we are. My husband and I are moving into a beautiful home here in Vancouver. Yes. So we're in the energy of, and I wanted to gift myself with not being overly busy.
Exactly.
How cool is that, right?
And we want to honor that. I want to honor that. And I was really glad that you set that boundary around the time for yourself. And so that
Thank you.
is another big piece I'm hoping to leave everybody with, is that saying no is not selfish. It's self-full. Learning how to choose how you want to spend your time and energies, and becoming more aware of what it's like when you aren't doing things and what's coming up for you. Anyway, so we are coming to the end, and I always am terrified I'm going to lose the video because, and I don't want to do that. But you guys, it's been really great. Hope to see you next week, those that have joined. And I'm really, really feeling a lot of gratitude that you've come and spent your time and chosen to be with us today for this hour. And it's always an absolute pleasure. Please make sure that you send a message to Thomas or myself, or both of us, if you would like more support. But also, if you have ideas, if any of you have some ideas or some topics, please, send us a message. We'd love to know what it is you'd like to hear from us, because we are always open to new ideas. So we're going to love you and leave you, as it were, and hope to see you very soon. So thank you all. Thomas, thanks again. And
absolute pleasure.
And good luck next week with the move.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, bye all.
Bye all.